Good afternoon. Good afternoon. At this time, I would like to call the Recreation and Human Service Committee to order, and I ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Sure. Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember Lightfoot.
Present.
Councilmember Martin.
Here.
President Melendez.
Here.
Thank you.
Introductory number 57, authorizing a grant agreement with amending the 2022-23 budget relating to the Youth Voice One Vision Youth Leadership Program. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Just a comment, you know, the Youth One Vision, One Voice, I know they work in conjunction with the folks over at the county's youth department as well, too. Those guys do great work, those young folks. One Youth, One Vision, I believe it is, right? And just, you know, I love to see them doing more things like outreach type of stuff, different things of that nature within the community, engaging maybe even with us as council from time to time, things that we can do to just kind of encourage them and support them in their work, our young people. You know, but I just enjoy that program and that work that's been going on for many years. I just wanted to say, you know, keep up the good work.
Thank you, Council Lightfoot. I'd like to also.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Just in that same vein, I want to highlight that it's not just YVOV, but certainly My Brother's Keeper initiative is also doing a Youth Peace Summit, and they're looking to do it on March 25th, which is a Saturday, and the leaders from Youth Voice One Vision will be facilitating at that event. So there's a lot of work that's happening with these young folks in the community, and they're truly the future of our community. So we're very excited to support them too.
Is there any additional comments? For point of privilege, I'll go next. I'd just like to also echo my colleagues' remarks. I agree that this is a great program. I'm looking forward to you know, seeing more of what they're going to do. I do have just a follow-up question. I noticed there was an answer given for, let's see, how you will recruit the students or the youth that will be part of this. And I just wanted to ask, will there be a poster that you will have or some type of digital piece to circulate so you can recruit?
So the recruitment happens within the rec centers, so they do work with the young people in the recreation centers. There's not a flyer per se, but they talk about it in all of the groups. So we have small groups of student leaders in the rec centers, and that's where the applications go out through those young people.
Thank you. And then I have another follow-up question to one of the questions that was asked in agenda review. It's about the guide booklet, the mental health guide booklet. And once it's drafted and it's finalized, can you please share a copy with us?
Yes, we will.
Thank you. So will that?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just by you saying that guidebook sparked this question that's not here. We know that our teen suicide rate is up significantly, and I just kind of wanted, I'm not looking for necessarily an answer, it's not really a question, it's more so just, and when I'm saying engaging with the youth a little more, I'm wondering if there's things that maybe this team could help facilitate panel discussions or conversations around that within our community, because we are seeing this massive amount of suicide among teenagers, and I just kind of want to know what type, are they having those types of conversations in this setting, this group setting?
So the next transmittal, number 58, will address a lot of what you're talking about.
Okay.
So that is the transmittal where we are going to start providing social emotional supports in the recreation centers, which will address suicide as well as all of the other trauma-informed experiences that our youth are dealing with. So that's going to help that be embedded. It says 4 recreation centers, but we know that it's happening across all of them, and so we're building the capacity so that we can transfer those skills in other recreation centers as well.
Now, are those, and I can ask, you know, are those services adult-led or youth-led? Will they be, or combination?
So the services are primarily under the auspice of an adult. But when you think about trauma and you talk about circles, so the adults may call together a circle, but the young people can lead the discussion in the circle.
That's what I'm talking about. See, I'm more interested in seeing, love the fact that we're providing those services and going to be expanding those, hopefully more. But I definitely want to hear youth leading more of these conversations with their peers, because I think that's part of the issue is young people aren't talking to older people. You know, and we had our Total Health and Wellness Initiative event today. And that's one of the things I was asking. I was asking some of our folks that were there that were work in Monroe County Youth Department was there, and I was asking them, and that was one of the things, concerns that was coming up. So anything we could do to, and I know that group has been around a while, and they have a lot of connections with different various others, you know, that they can do to let them facilitate those conversations, and maybe that could be helpful in helping others. Thank you.
And so you have to build the capacity in young people to be the leaders, and so that's what this work will allow us to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional questions?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Okay. And now we vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion carries. Introductory number 58, amending the 2022-23 budget, authorizing agreement related to the R Center Health, Wellness, and Social Emotional Programming and Support. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead. Councilmember Patterson.
So happy to see that the administration is proposing this, but I'm just wondering, previous administration had a program offering emotional first aid to our center staff. Is that program continuing?
So yes, we have had that training, thanks to council for providing the funds for that, but we train not only our recreation staff, but staff across drives,
Okay.
including our Rochester Animal Services. So it's about anyone who has forward-facing relationships with our customers. So it didn't end with recreation. We've done it across the board.
Okay. Are we still contracting out for the training, or do we have an internal trainer for the program?
We contracted out with the training. That was the same provider
Okay.
that you
Good.
mentioned.
Yep, good one, good one. All right, thank you.
Any additional, okay? Councilmember
Yes,
Stan?
so is there a focus on services for LGBTQ youth? We also know they have the highest rates of suicide in our community, so I'm wondering what that looks like with them in mind.
So all of our programs are inclusive, and we make sure that we are mindful of the various needs of our young people and how they respond. So all of our programming is open and inclusive. And even we used to call it, and I'm going to ask the name of it in a second, but we would say we have a girls group and a boys group. We're no longer saying we have a girls group and a boys group. We're having a, what's the name of it? Young People Advancing Forward.
Any additional questions? Okay. I need a motion and a second.
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. Introductory number 59, authorizing agreements relating to the Preparing Youth Leaders for Real World in Rochester Mayor's Youth Academy Close-Up Program. Any questions? Comments? I need a motion and a second.
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. If there's no further business, the Recreation and Human Service Committee stands adjourned.
message. How you doing? Good.
All right, I'll take that one. But I think we're yeah. And it's a good group, strong. You can send it to me, you can send it to Gloria.
So when you go in there and find those KPIs, don't ask them what they say anymore. Look, right? Don't know what they say. Read them. I learned when I first started interpreting.
Here goes mine. You're welcome. Yes, the good thing is that we put our numbers. So like the guy is just a numbers person. What's up, man? How are you? Good to see you. How are you? MNPM. MNPM. Yeah, we have parts that have housing, education, a whole spiel. yeah, and it's funny because, you know, the neighbors, but they asked me to get involved in it. I said, look, because at one time, there was a neighbors association. Everybody was white. So then I got to the point where Lori and I, and whatever, and next thing you know, we got to go.
would like to call the Public Safety Committee to order and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Sure. President Melendez,
Here.
Vice President Lupian, Councilmember Gruber, Councilmember Harris,
Here.
Councilmember Lightfoot,
Present, ma'am.
Councilmember Martin,
Here.
Councilmember Patterson,
Here.
Councilmember Pio,
Here.
Councilmember Smith. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So with that, before we get into the legislative business of the Public Safety Committee, I want to acknowledge two things. One, that we really want to wrap the committee before 4:45 due to timing of our committee structure. And also, before we begin, we have a special recognition from the council that we would like to present. So Chief Hernandez, I will invite you to come up for a special presentation. City Council would like to read the following proclamation in your honor. We'll begin with Councilmember Gruber.
Whereas Felipe Hernandez Jr. graduated from Olympia High School, then accepted his first position in city government in April 2000 as a firefighter in the Rochester Fire Department. He simultaneously continued his education and went on to receive his associate's degree in fire protection technology from Monroe Community College in 2003, and
Whereas he rose to the fire department ranks and became a lieutenant in the training division in July 2008, and he went on to become a lieutenant in the suppression division in July 2010. He later advanced to the position of captain in said division, and
Whereas, alongside his professional career, Chief Hernandez simultaneously pursued the advancement of his education by receiving his BS in Business Administration with a specialization in management from SUNY Brockport in 2009. This pursuit to further knowledge and development culminated him receiving a Master's in Leadership and Change Management from Nazareth College in 2020, and
Whereas Chief Hernandez has worn many hats throughout his career. In addition to his work at the fire department, he was also a state fire instructor for the New York State Office of Fire Prevention and Control for almost 17 years. And he taught as an adjunct instructor at Monroe Community College for 7 years. And
Whereas Chief Hernandez continued to progress within the fire department as he became deputy chief of both training and emergency management in April 2014, and he became the deputy chief of the suppression division in April 2016. He was then promoted to the rank of executive deputy fire chief in April 2019, and under the Warren administration, he was appointed as the first Latino fire chief of the city of Rochester in March 2021. In fact, he was the first Latino to lead a major city fire department in New York State. And
whereas Chief Hernandez has not only exceptionally led the 506-member Rochester Fire Department for the past 2 years, but he also attained the designation of Chief Fire Officer in 2021, an accomplishment only achieved by 16 people across New York State and by 1,750 people across both the United States and Canada. And
Chief Hernandez has led a commendable career, and he has left his mark not only on the fire department, but also on this community. He has served as a role model for the city of Rochester, and through his tireless work ethic and exceptional capacity as a leader, he has proven that there is no limit to what can be achieved. While we will miss his leadership in City Hall and the Rochester Fire Department, we wish him a much-deserved, long, happy, and healthy retirement.
Here.
Now, therefore, we, City Council President Miguel A. Melendez Jr., Vice President Mary Lupian, and Council members Mitch Gruber, LaShady Harris, Willie J. Lightfoot, Stanley Martin, Michael A. Patterson, Jose M. Pio, and Kim Smith of the City of Rochester do proclaim February 9th to be a time to celebrate the career and retirement of Felipe Hernandez Jr. Chief Hernandez, thank you for your service again. With that,
President Melendez,
yes, Councilmember Harris.
can I make a comment, please?
Absolutely.
I'd just like to say thank you to the administration for adding the AED to the back of the chambers. Definitely, certainly after what happened in Buffalo at the game with the Buffalo Bills player that had cardiac arrest, we certainly don't want to have an incident here in the chambers and not be ready to respond. So those of you who are responders here, and of course we have AMR here in the building and Dr. Ruckman here, you guys could appreciate that. We have now at the back of the chambers and AEDs, right there outside the chamber doors in the back. When you pull the AED out, it has an alarm attached to it. And this AED is available for anybody in the chambers, not just our law enforcement or our firefighters. It's for anyone to use. Thank you very much to the administration.
Thank you. So with that, we have a very brief presentation from AMR that we're going to do, and then we also have an update related to motor vehicle thefts, Kia and Hyundais from RPD before we jump into our legislative business. So I'm going to ask AMR to present first and welcome you to the podium.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having us. I have a couple of our team members with us. I have our medical director, Dr. Ruckman, our operations manager, Mark Philippi, our senior operations supervisor, Andrew Perez, our community liaison, Louis Aponte. This was originally designed to be a PowerPoint format, but just due to timing and how this is set up, I'm just going to read through. You guys should all have a copy. This is meant to be high level and hopefully the first of many communications. AMR Rochester is currently staffed with about 215 union and non-union employees. We respond to about 75,000 requests for service annually, resulting in 50 to 55,000 transports. There has been a series of systemic challenges that have faced service delivery over the course of the last several years. Prior to the pandemic, there was a study put out by the state of New York for the crisis that was EMS staffing, the availability of certified EMS personnel, including EMTs and paramedics. Since the pandemic, that crisis has only gotten exponentially worse in not only the availability, but there's been a significant increase in the amount of places that are hiring our certified providers to work, to include the hospital systems. Making recruitment and retention somewhat challenging, and then additionally speaking, the staffing issues and the staffing crisis obviously doesn't only extend to our services and capabilities, but key partners in which directly impact how we deliver the services that we deliver, most namely the hospitals, hospital emergency departments, and then probably one of the larger issues that we have been challenged in really communicating because of not regular knowledge of how our business or how our services are rendered is how many of these problems are overlapping and directly impact the others. So if we have an ambulance stuck in an emergency department for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, that ambulance is not available to make their next response. Supplies are limited, and there's only so much you can do when the EDs start to back up when you're already working from a reduced supply of certified providers. We have not been idle in trying to address these issues. In the summer of 2021, we implemented the first paid vocational training to identify people from the community, to train them how to be an AMR employee, an EMS provider, and get you certified at the EMT level, hiring you and paying you full time to complete all training, and then at the completion of training and certification, you then go into the SEIU 200, which is our union, and you are a full-time EMT on the road. In that program, we have developed and partnered with some wonderful other community members. We are working now with Ibero in their job placement programs and identification and providing additional pre-employment training and other services to get them ready to enter the professional workforce. We're working with Community Place. REOC does recommendations for applicants into their building for opportunities through our academy. And we are actively working with a few other community partners to do similar style programs in action. And since the city and RCSD started the Pathways program again at the beginning of this past year, or at least the planning and conversations for reimplementation over the next couple of years, we have been actively engaged in working for the high school level student, trying to garner interest as they, obviously looking to enter the workforce. As to the paramedic education, we have exponentially increased our support in that program to, as closely as we can, mirror the concept of our EMT Academy. We provide full tuition and books for going to either MCC or FLCC, which are the only two local offerings. And then we're paying our providers up to 30 hours per week of class time so that they can be a successful student and hopefully work to start replenishing the ranks of paramedics in our system. That also is a slow process, as it takes, MCC takes a year for just the education. And just so you're aware, and as we were talking about at the state emergency medical services meeting these past couple of days, the paramedic program is 2.5 years or 2.25 in multiplier of what an associate's degree is, but is only recognized as a certificate degree program, which is not a light undertaking. It takes probably 14 to 16 months from start to end to actually get a paramedic in theater performing as a paramedic. We started that program this past August for MCC, and FLCC started on the new class, which started last month. Just to talk about the academy, the EMT Academy, just for a little bit, the first 6 Earn While You Learn EMT cohorts, we had 75 academic participants, 42 of which became fully qualified and certified EMTs. 75% of those were directly from the city of Rochester. 69% were female. 53% Black or African American. 27% were white. 16% were Hispanic or Latino, and 3% Asian. And yes, that comes to 99%. The rest was lost in the rounding. In March of 2022, we graduated a class of all 10 female graduates, the first fully female academy in the country for us, and we run academies in almost every state of operation that the AMR does business, as we're trying to figure out innovative ways to replenish the ranks of EMS providers, which is a very outstanding and, quite honestly, completely unplanned and unexpected situation. And we have found that for whatever reason, the female population has really been what has been drawn to the offering. To try to get to the current certified or recruit front and retention, we are currently and have been offering for multiple months and quite honestly in multiple iterations over the last couple of years, our new hire incentives to take on a new full-time EMT or paramedic. We're offering a $10,000 sign-on bonus for paramedics and a $5,000 sign-on bonus for full-time EMTs. Conversely, for retention purposes, we're offering the same for our current employees to go out and recruit EMTs and paramedics. So if you're a full-time employee and you go out and find a full-time paramedic, come on, we will pay you $10,000 as well as $5,000 for an EMT. In regards to response innovations, we have been working closely with the 911 Center and Dr. Cushman in growing our Nurse Navigator program and bringing on AD partners. Happy to talk about that at any time. We have also implemented a similar style program to Nurse Nav in the field, which is a Medicare and New York State Medicaid project called Emergency Triage Treat and Transport, or ET3, which allows our providers or our EMTs and paramedics to respond to your home, maybe realize that you don't necessarily need to go to an emergency department. Maybe you have a toothache, and through our combination of both Nurse Nav and ET3, we are alternative destination partner with Eastman Dental Clinic. We can set up a lift ride and have you transported over for a dentist appointment and back, which is, as we go through this, we've introduced telehealth through both projects. We've introduced alternative destinations outside of the emergency department in both projects. And through both projects, we also offer and support rideshare or lift rides to get them back and forth for those who can't get their own transportation.
I'm going to ask if you could conclude,
Last two
and
slides?
so we can move to questions if there are any.
Last two slides, huge barrier for us as well has been existing provider stress and mental health. This has been a very challenging and highly worked, thousands and thousands of mandated hours, holdover hours, and the stressors of the pandemic and the violence has not missed our population. And then just for your reference, I did include a snapshot of some average response time data based on current system design. And outside of that, I have no further.
Thank you. Any questions from the council at this time? Wait, seeing none.
I have one.
Oh, Councilmember Gruber?
I appreciate the slide on the average response times. Can you just give a sense how this compares to previous years? I mean, is this pretty standard?
No, that is pre-pandemic response was far superior with increased availability of human resources, not only for our organization but hospitals. The system was functioning better, which allowed for a smoother transition of just about everything. So, are those the best numbers we've ever put? Absolutely not.
And
they are better than they've been.
But they're markedly worse than they were in 2019.
Oh, absolutely.
And a little bit better than they were in 2021.
Yes, sir.
Got it. Thank you.
Just real quick, can you speak to what the response looks like when there's a person in crisis team or the FIT team? How did AMR integrate within that system, and how's that going?
That is a little bit longer question. I will do my best to be brief. So the PIC response can come through us in a variety of different ways. To speak to the medical or the EMD dispatching part, which is essentially how our system is prioritized, most of the time, if you are talking about mental health, those would be considered a low acuity job, which means almost every other call in the system is going to probably prioritize above that, which sometimes makes it challenging when we are dealing with times of low resources to get there as timely as I think pretty much everybody would like us to be there. Yeah. The idea would be, in cases where it worked, that we would never actually make it there if we were able to obviously deal with that side. But in circumstances in which ambulance transportation will work, we would ultimately respond to that without lights and sirens at the next opportune time where there was an ambulance available to do so.
Okay. Thank you so much, and this was a great presentation. Thank you for all the work you all are doing.
Appreciate it.
Councilmember Patterson.
So thank you for the work you guys do, and if you can just help us better understand the challenges that you're facing with your new hires. I know you've got a wonderful gentleman right here who's been doing it since, the earth cooled, but I imagine that he isn't representative of the vast majority of your workforce. So when you're bringing in new folks, how long do they tend to stay on the job before they transition to another area?
Our industry has always had a high turnover percentage. There are many reasons for that, but we're probably looking at somewhere in that window of 1 to 3 years. It has, as far as with the academy itself, we are far better positioned to expose and train people to what to expect in theater. In previous or historical kind of training, when you just went out and did an EMT class somewhere. The fact is the EMT class teaches you the basics on how to become an EMT, but is not realistic to the application of EMT skills in any theater. So to that has been a benefit of bringing stuff in-house where we can expose, without use of better words, our participants to how does the equipment work, our providers, our leadership, and they have a significantly increased third-person ride-along in which they actually get to actively participate with, without use of better words, adult supervision as they learn their trade.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming to City Council chambers and providing this information.
Thank you for your time.
With that, I'd like to invite RPD Deputy Chief Correa to, or whoever is presenting.
I'm going to start.
Yes, so Mayor, we'll turn it over to you to talk about the theft issue.
Yeah, so obviously the Kia Boys was a TikTok challenge that has gone viral and is a challenge across our country, not just in Rochester. And we've seen an increase in stolen cars at unprecedented levels. I'll just make a couple of comments, and then I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Marone, who will answer any questions that he can. I know he has a hard stop at 4:45. One challenge that we're facing is that the vast majority of these cars that are being stolen are being stolen by our young people, which is why the legislation that you have in front of you today, the Peace Collective, is so very important, because we have to make sure that we keep our young people as busy as possible, that we keep them engaged, and that we keep them away from looking at social media, which is encouraging them to steal these cars. That's one end. The second point I'll make, which is very important, and Kia and Hyundai bear some responsibility for this. Now, I'm not saying that because a car is easy to steal, someone should steal it, but they made it a lot easier. It would be very hard to steal most of your cars that are up there unless you drive a Kia or a Hyundai within that year, because the technology is such that you just can't do it. And if you remember, if you go back 3 years, we very rarely had conversations about cars being stolen, because in the late 90s, early 2000s, this technology started to come in where it was almost impossible to steal a car, right? I had a club on my car probably for 5 or 6 years because that's what we did, right? That people stole cars regularly. That we saw a precipitous drop in cars being stolen because of that advent of that technology. But our kids are brilliant. They're smart. And I wish that they could use some of those skills for other things. But this Kia challenge has swept the country, and it is easy for these cars to be stolen. And I will tell you that the mayor's office has been inundated with individuals whose cars have been stolen and want to know, hey, what are you gonna do about this? I'll also add that it's not an easy or quick fix, but we do know that there are some preventative methods that we can do. So Lieutenant Marone may mention this. The clubs are back until Kia and Hyundai can get their fix done. That fix, I believe, is sometime in March. They're supposed to be having individuals come in and get those cars fixed. But we also have to look at this from a preventative standpoint, and that is getting in front of our young people, because again, like I said, the vast majority of these cars that are being stolen are young people, and this is across the county, so we need to make sure we do that. The other point I'll make before I turn it over to the lieutenant is that we're looking at doing an immediate administration change as it relates to individuals that have their cars stolen. Back in the day, and we still are trying to figure out when this changed, if your car was stolen, you would not have to pay to have your car, which was stolen, charged a daily rate in the impound lot. So we're going to work on changing that policy because we don't want to punish people twice. Your car is stolen, your car is stolen, and people's close to me cars have been stolen. I've gotten calls at 2 in the morning. Their kids' uniforms are in the back. They can't get to work. They got to do all that stuff. And then on top of that, we say, all right, we're going to charge you a fee for us keeping track of your stolen car. So we're looking at making that administrative change to hopefully see that changing. And then the other thing is we're going to be a lot more proactive. We got to be a lot more proactive in terms of reaching out to our young people. I think that our work around violence prevention and those things will be helpful in that regard. But that's how we solve the larger problem. That doesn't address the immediate issue. But long term, we need to get in people's minds to get them to think that, no, we don't want to steal a car. We don't want to do that, particularly when a lot of these cars are being used for joyriding. So this is a challenge that is on our radar, something that will take a multi-pronged approach. And then the last thing I'll say is, you noticed I mentioned 3 different things. We're a simplistic society. Social media has really caused a lot of that, where we think we can just do one thing. There's not one thing that we can do to stop the car thefts. So we gotta go at this from multiple angles. One, the clubs, being that the cars aren't equipped with the technology. So any individual that has a Hyundai or Kia that was within that year, the Rochester Police Department has gotten those clubs. We need to get those out to people so we can lock the steering wheels. We know that they work. There's video of people breaking the window, and then they see that club is on. They can't move the vehicle, so they don't do that. So that's important. Secondly, to reiterate, making sure that we engage the vast majority of the population that are doing this. These are not anybody who is of the age in this room. They are kids. They are babies, 13, 14, and 15. They are not known to the police. They are not known criminals. They are individuals that are engaging in behavior that's not good, and we need to get ahead and do that. And then thirdly, we need Kia and Hyundai to make it right. We need them to make it right for the individuals whose cars have been stolen. Letters have been sent to them from various levels of government saying, what are you going to do about this? Those are 3 things that are, I think, absolutely critical. And then the 4th thing is making sure that we provide relief to individuals who have had their cars taken. So those are 4 key strategies. But I'll turn it over to the lieutenant to talk about some of the numbers and the particulars, and then answer some of the questions that you have. He may not be able to answer much, but he can tell you what he can, and he can get back we can get back to you on anything that we can answer.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. You kind of hit a bunch of my talking points already. My name is Brian Marone with the Rochester Police Department, Commanding Officer of Patrol Section Investigations. Really kind of covered the gist of the overall summary of what's going on. For those of you that aren't aware, I'll kind of follow it up a little bit and be brief. I know we have a limited amount of time, but we're dealing with a trend with Kia and Hyundais, if you weren't familiar. It kind of started actually last summer, but really just recently hit Rochester kind of around November last year, and it's really picked up over the last couple months. I was really just asked to kind of talk about stats related with that, but before I do so, if you haven't had a chance, I would encourage you to kind of maybe Google on YouTube, like, how to steal a Kia. You'll see how fast and what we're dealing with. And ultimately, the trend that we're talking about is generally youth, juveniles in this area, and it's a countywide problem, a nationwide problem. They're smashing rear windows of vehicles, they're ripping the ignition apart, and they're able to start the vehicles with ease with a screwdriver or a USB port, end of a USB port. That's kind of how it works in a summary, but just to go over the stats, which I was asked to talk about. In 2020, for the entire year, Rochester experienced 824 motor vehicle thefts. That number includes attempts as well, so it's not necessarily committed ones, but also attempted thefts of it. It's been rising, so as you'll see, 2021 there was 986. In 2022, we had 1,133. And most recently, the large glaring number is year to date. So since the beginning of January, we've had approximately 374. This is all available on our open data portal, so it's something you can easily see. The community members can see if they want to see it. Out of those, that's not entirely all Kias and Hyundais, so thank you to our Crime Analysis Center. They've kind of been able to sort through to see which ones actually match the trend. Out of those 374 this year alone, it's about 200 that match the trend. So that are Kia or Hyundai and experienced a smashed window, damaged ignition, and the vehicle's been stolen. So of those numbers, just for some perspective, we've already recovered, so located, recovered, returned to owners about 300 of the vehicles of the 374. So there's currently about 74 kind of stolen vehicles outstanding from the city of Rochester that we're looking for, which is a lot. One of the problems we're experiencing while we're dealing with this, and the mayor kind of alluded to it, is a lot of repeat offenders with juveniles. So I put a few examples, not going to name names or anything like that, but one situation where he arrested the same individual 4 times. That individual was involved in the Monroe Ave and Pittsford robbery of a jewelry store as well. He was arrested one afternoon by us, spoken to, interviewed in a stolen car, charged, given an appearance ticket, and that same evening committed that robbery in Pittsford in another stolen vehicle. So just to kind of lay it out there with some of the things we're having. As far as juveniles go, I can tell you we've worked with the DA's office closely and all the other agencies around the county. One other specific example is a 14-year-old youth. Unfortunately, on like January 13th, he was arrested for the robbery of a vehicle. I believe that was on East Main Street. So using force, stole a vehicle from another person. Fortunately, our officers are doing a good job out there working, and they took him into custody. He was detained in that incident for it, which often sometimes we're forced to give appearance tickets, but he's detained in that situation, and then the next day he was released in the morning, and by 11 a.m. the New York State Police had arrested him in another stolen vehicle. So it's just the next day. It's something we're dealing with. Like I said, it is a countywide problem. Recently we held a meeting. Other agencies are experiencing the same things. We're working with parole, probation, and all the other agencies. We do have a stolen automobile task force here in the Rochester Police Department. There are monthly meetings for that. This has obviously become a bigger trend. A lot of what they do initially dealt with catalytic converter thefts and like insurance fraud scams and stuff, but we're kind of refocusing that. I've got a team of investigators now that are solely working on this. They're backtracking through all the 200 incidents to see if there's anything we missed, scouring for video, and then we have patrol officers out there that have access to a 10-day hot sheet, which will show all stolen vehicles within the city on that hot sheet that they can easily see, recognize, and as they're driving around patrolling the city, if they observe them, they're doing the best to try and recover them. If there's situations where we can enforce arrests, we will. When they're juveniles, we'll work with family members. That's part of the process, so it's kind of, the mayor discussed intervention. That's something that happens kind of built in with that process. When we arrest a juvenile, we can't just deal with them ourselves. We have to locate a family member or guardian, so they're involved in the process for it. That's kind of where we're at with it. We have done a lot of outsourcing kind of the public information to something the mayor mentioned. Our PIO, Lieutenant Bello, has been kind of working on that. You've probably seen and heard it, but he's been working closely with Kia and Hyundai. And I don't know if our deputy chief has any information about the wheel locks, but I believe we recently received about 500 of them.
Yes, they're in route.
Okay. So they're en route, and I think there's actions to hope to prevent the issue that's going on. It's not, as the mayor said, there's not one fix for this. It's something that we're working on from all angles, and I'm happy to answer, questions that you might have, but I know I was trying to be brief, so.
Thank you, Lieutenant Marone. I think there's, and Mayor, thank you for the update as well. Certainly, colleagues on the council will have several questions, more than likely, but I'm going to ask, in the interest of time today, that if we can put questions in writing to the administration on this subject, that might be a little bit easier. But first and foremost, just in regards to the administration change relative to the impound fees, I want to thank the administration for moving so quickly on that. We're trying to keep up with this problem, and the fact that we're able to look at that and move so quickly is really commendable, and all of council, I think, would be thankful for that change. And then my question was around the wheel locks, but I think since it's just, they're en route, the question that I had was just really about whether or not these will be just for Kia and Hyundai, or if there's going to be some other process.
The specifics on how we're going to distribute them have not been fully laid out. We want to make sure that it's a fair and equitable process for everyone involved. So once we establish how they're going to be distributed, we will let you know as soon as possible.
So I know there's a lot of questions on this. As a matter of timekeeping here, I'm going to ask if folks can put those in writing. Sorry, what's that? Okay, Councilmember Pio, and then I'm cutting it off.
Thank you.
If he goes, I have to go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can we hold the parents' insurance company accountable?
That's a good question. I don't know. We'd have to look into that.
Because someone has to be held accountable. These kids are going out there and doing it over and over again. Someone must be held accountable. There's people going into debt, job.
So will the fees be retroactive? We are hearing of cases where people are currently having to pay the impound fees. So I'm wondering if there will be a retroactive component for those who've had their car stolen and had to pay.
Again, it's the administrative fix we're still looking at. I don't think so, but we'll have to look at how we're going to handle that.
Right. So with that, I'm going to move us to, thank you, Lieutenant Marone. Thank you, everyone, for the information. I'm going to move us to the legislative business of the Public Safety Committee. We have a few items this month. We'll start off with introductory number 60, authorizing agreements relating to the Rochester Peace Collective. Any questions, comments, concerns? Councilmember Pio.
Thank you. It looks like we have two seemingly faith-based entities, one being Untrapped Ministries, the other being First Genesis Baptist Church. First Genesis Baptist Church is receiving $30,000 and going to assist between 50 to 100 people. The other entity is getting paid 6 times the amount. How many people are they going to help? Or if you don't know, how many people have they helped in the past year?
I know we have that number from Summer Enrichment. Vic, do you have the number on how many they?
Yeah, we worked with. They worked with 45 young people through our summer enrichment.
45 people?
Yeah.
That was through Summer Enrichment, but with this, it will be more.
Okay. It's going to be 6 times more?
Vic, do you know the numbers off?
No, I don't know.
Thanks.
Yeah. But Councilmember Pio, we can get you the exact numbers on how many.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gruber.
Thank you for the information about evaluation. I appreciate the fact that the administration issued an RFP for a subrecipient monitor for all ARPA-funded projects. I think that makes sense. I do think, though, that the Peace Collective is different than probably every other ARPA-funded project in the sense that it is, in a lot of ways, going to be very difficult to prove the efficacy, right? We're trying to prove the absence of something. We're not ultimately trying to monitor and evaluate the creation of something as we would with the building of a project. I just wonder if there's an opportunity to work with some of the other national organizations that are at the ground level on a lot of anti-violence, creative, outside-the-box efforts, and if there's been conversations about how they're evaluating, and if there's ways to build some efficiencies there.
There's absolutely opportunities to do that. And remember, this process that we have outlined is not new. A lot of what you're seeing here is modeled after what my brother mayor in Newark is doing, Raz Baraka, who has a Office of Violence Prevention Services. And this impetus of the Peace Collective is almost modeled after exactly what he did around violence prevention. So they have many resources that we will be able to lean on in terms of proving something. And this was a long conversation I had with the state delegation today. And one of the things I said was, one of the things that we have to reorientate people's minds on is that when you're investing in people and things like this, it's hard to quantify, but it really isn't that hard to quantify, because if a kid gets into one of these programs, gets a job, and stay out of trouble, we just need to capture that to be able to tell that story. It's something that we call lifting up stories. We need to be able to lift up the stories of these individuals. Some of it will be anecdotal data, but a lot of it can be quantitative data as well. How many hours did they spend doing X activity? Where did they end up a year later? Were they employed? For me, employment is a major strong marker for a young person in success. Anyone that under the age of 18, between the ages of 14 and 18, and are participating in a job, to me, that's success. Because the data shows that if a young person has a job, they're not getting in trouble. Or if it's not a job because of their age, or if it's an adult, a job is a good marker. But also if it's a reentry program, or if it's something that is allowing them to move their life in a positive direction, the question is what is it, and then how do you quantify it? But I think we have to do that not just with this Peace Collective. The Peace Collective is 0.000 whatever of our budget, but also with our work that we're doing in the libraries, in the recreation centers, and all of the other youth-serving and adult-serving programs that we're doing. Remember, the Peace Collective is $5 million, but almost 3 times the dollars that we're investing, $14.5 million in workforce, which is starting this year. And that also, the same evaluation component also has to apply to that, as well as our home repair program. So we have to make sure that we have good evaluation components in all of these things, and not just the Peace Collective, but across all of our programs. And why that's important is because it allows us to then leverage other dollars. Because if we can show that we are successful in transforming people's lives, that helps us with our federal partners, but it also helps us realize dollars from foundations and others. And everyone knows that I have been begging for dollars at every level. And I have no problem doing that, but I think that we will be able to show that this is a successful program. But you're right, council member, it's much harder to quantify because it's not like, hey, you're building a bridge and hey, there you go.
Or you're running a workforce development program, and this is how many jobs you created. Right. I mean, those are. I'm not saying they're easy to do, but they're easy metrics to quantify. I'd love to know what Mayor Baraka is doing in Newark, and I'm sure they have annual reports that talk about what are the huge wins in all of their anti-violence efforts. I just hope that we don't only see the evaluation of Peace Collective as part of a larger ARPA evaluation. I think it merits its own evaluation strategy because I'd love to see us continue to fund these small grassroots organizations. We have to have an operating reason to do so.
Yeah, it's in our best interest to make sure that we show the success for the Peace Collective because remember, we have 86 proposals that were asked for. And in addition to those 86 proposals, not all of them were able to be funded, but we're working on getting outside of the city for those other programs. And some of these, and these ARPA dollars are temporary. So if we want to see other things be funded, it's going to be incumbent upon us to make sure we have a good evaluation component with ARPA, but particularly with the Peace Collective. But all of the ARPA dollars have to be accounted for.
Any additional questions? Councilmember Martin?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I'm grateful for, the investments in the community organizations doing the work. For example, Rise Up Rochester, Rock the Peace, Untrapped Ministries, and the others who previously received funding. I'm very excited for this paradigm shift of how violence is prevented in our community and it being focused on investment. So I'm very excited to see what happens and the benefits in our community. So thank you to the administration and Mr. Sanders for this.
Need a motion and a second? Been moved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Introductory number 61, authorizing a grant agreement with professional services agreement relating to criminal justice discovery reform and installing cameras in patrol vehicles. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councilmember Harris.
I'd like to thank the administration for looking into this. Is something I've been asking for. Putting these on the patrol vehicles, I think this would save life, and also document the incidents for the public as well as for the police, and for our ability to be able to know what happened when things, are brought to our attention. So thank you very much, the administration. I do have a question. Will this, is there a more detailed cost breakdown of what the equipment is?
Elena?
We can get you that information.
Thank you. That would be it.
Councilmember Patterson?
So my questions are in that same vein. What are we paying per camera? How many police vehicles are we looking to outfit with cameras? What's the storage capacity of the camera? Will the camera be on all the time? Is the camera facing out? Is the camera facing in? Is it both? Just a little bit more detail. And I guess I'm happy to get the $129,000, and I'm happy to vote in favor of cameras in police vehicles. But it would be nice if we had some more detail on what exactly it is that even though we're not paying for it, we're accepting the grant. It'd be nice to get some more detail.
Yeah, hold on.
I think a point of clarification.
Just to make sure I'm reading it.
Yeah. So
now we're working on dashboard cameras. We are.
So what is this?
But this is body-worn camera equipment in the RPD patrol vehicles. So Elena, if you want to clarify.
So okay, good. That'd be good. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is
Thank you. I just want to clarify. These are body-worn cameras that are on the officers,
Mhm.
and the money that's being used here is to upgrade the docking stations inside the police vehicles.
Okay.
And to answer your question, we're trying to install about 250 of these in our patrol vehicles. We have a very aggressive plan moving forward. This will be done in the month of March.
Okay, so what that means then, just clarification, okay, so instead of the camera being on the officer all the time, when they get in the vehicle, they can put it in the docking port will charge the camera, upload the data, and then later on, when they get out of the vehicle, they can grab that camera, put it back on, and go back out. Is that correct?
Primarily, that's correct. I mean, there are going to be times that the camera will remain on the officer. It's up to the individual officer if they want the camera to remain on themselves or if they want to dock it. Again, it depends on how long they're using it, the battery storage of that specific camera. If there's someone in the vehicle, then the camera has to be situated on that person inside the vehicle. But primarily, it will be docked to upload the data that's required.
Okay, when the camera is docked, will it still be on, powered, and recording?
Generally, no, it's not.
Okay. But, so currently with the cameras, when the officer is wearing the camera, I thought it was always recording, but it doesn't really activate until the officer presses the button. That's why we have the volume, that sound lag. Is that correct?
In order for the camera to be recording, it has to be turned on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Councilmember Martin?
Can you speak to how this supports criminal justice discovery reform?
As part of the discovery process, the data from the body-worn camera footage has to be part of discovery, so it does fit into the actual grant itself, the grant portion.
So, it sounds
The grant asks for, it has to be something that has to be discoverable. Body-worn camera footage is discoverable, so it fits into the requirements of the grant.
So essentially, the docking station makes it more easily accessible because it's being uploaded more quickly than, I don't know.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
We are upgrading the current system we have because it's kind of obsolete. It's no longer supported at all through the vendors. So this is a brand new system that we have purchased, and we have to upgrade the equipment we currently have in our cars in order to make sure that it's compatible with the new system we have.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I entertain a motion and a second. It's been moved. Seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And item number 67, introductory number 67 will be held at the request of the administration. We expect that there will be some updates to this and may come back soon. So with no further business before the Public Safety Committee, we stand adjourned.
I'm going to call the Finance Committee to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Sure. Councilmember Gruber?
Here.
Councilmember Patterson? Here. Councilmember Smith? Here. President Melendez?
Here.
Thank you.
So to the Finance Committee, just want to make a quick note. I have asked Finance Director Jones to make a presentation on the recent foreclosure auction, which some people have asked about. I'm going to ask her to do that at the end after we go through the legislative business. I have a child care deadline, and I want to get the business done first, and I might leave the presentation for everybody else. And we usually I would make the presentations by administration to be focused on the committee agenda, but I think as you'll see, there's very few things to ask a whole bunch of questions about. But if you have them, ask them. So with that, I'm going to introduce introductory number 62, authorizing an amendatory agreement relating to transitioning clients at the Financial Empowerment Center from the Section 8 rental voucher to the home ownership program. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councilmember Patterson?
Just a comment. Great program. Glad we're funding it. In favor.
From poverty to prosperity. That's what this is.
Councilmember Pio?
Go ahead.
Thank you. What can this grant go towards?
Angela?
Hi, so this grant is unrestricted. It's for after they purchase the home, and the goal is that they'll be using it for some unexpected, like first month or two of maintenance, which often people are not budgeting for. They're really focused on the down payment and the closing costs.
All right. Can you use it for furniture as well?
Yeah, so we're not verifying afterwards.
Okay, so it's paid directly to them and not to Section 8?
Section 8, yes, they cut the checks to the recipient.
Thank you.
If no further questions, I'll take a motion. It's been
Second.
moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Introductory number 63, amending the 2022-23 budget to fund the Rochester Public Library's implementation of recommendations set forth in the report of the Racial and Structural Equity Race Commission. First, just a thank you to Mayor Evans. I see Director Utaro back there. Thank you for putting the words into action here, and I would pass it over to my colleagues for any questions, comments, or concerns.
Move it.
Second.
So moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Introductory number 64, a resolution approving appointments and reappointments to the Rochester Public Library Board of Trustees. By the way, I should have disclosed in introductory number 63 that I am the City Council's liaison to the Library Board, and I will again disclose it here in 64. But I am allowed to vote, and I will take the privilege to do so. Any questions, comments, or concerns on 64?
Move it.
It's been moved.
Second.
And seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Introductory number 65, appropriating firefighters' insurance funds. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Move it.
It's been moved.
Second.
And seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Introductory number 66, authorizing an agreement for auditing services. I'm going to read a brief statement and then editorialize for a second. But this item is being held in committee with the intention of discharging it at the full City Council meeting in 2 weeks. The item will select a firm to provide auditing services for the City of Rochester, and this RFP process is currently underway. The process is expected to be complete next week, and the results of the RFP will be conveyed to City Council at that time. It is being handled this way to expedite the selection of an auditor once the process has been completed. I want to share some more information about this with my colleagues. This was an RFP that we put out. James, when was it originally put out? Months ago.
The process started in August.
Yeah, that sounds right. And it was for joint auditing services between the City of Rochester and the Rochester City School District, which is the way I believe it has always been, at least for decades. And it was a fine process, and at the end of the day, the city and the district had divergent opinions, and the district is now essentially asking to diverge and have their own auditing services. I find this incredibly problematic and very concerning for us to have different auditors when we know very well that our finances are tied, but it's also a dependent relationship. The Rochester City School District is dependent upon our ability to borrow money and our ability to be financially solvent. I think it's completely inappropriate for them to be diverging auditing services. And I know that the administration feels the same way, but they're going to take their own tact. I'm going to be writing a letter to the new RCSD fiscal monitor, and I would certainly ask any of my colleagues on council to join me. I believe if RCSD has a fiscal monitor to tell them that their previous spending habits have been a little bit suspect, it may not be a good idea for them to diverge from auditing services from the city, who has had sterling finances for as long as I've been alive. So I would welcome anyone to join me in that, but the reason why we don't have the name of the selected vendor is because we now have to change our RFP because we are no longer asking for joint services, we are asking for just city services. So that's where we are. I'd encourage anyone, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Councilmember Patterson.
What was the thinking on the part of the school district? Why did they decide?
Cheap.
Could you give us a little bit more clarification?
There were 4 bids. One was very high, 2 were in the middle, 1 was very low. The one that the city wanted to select was ultimately a city-based entity that was in the middle and that had a track record of doing services. The one RCSD wanted to select was the very, very, very lowest one that was way lower than anyone else by a significant margin and had never done business of this size for both a joint municipality and school board.
So the auditor that the city school district selected has no experience in auditing school districts?
No, they have no experience. I believe they actually, to their credit, I think did Buffalo City Schools. I think that's the only big school district they do. It's mostly rural and small towns is what their experience is. I don't believe they have any other joint auditing services between city and school district.
All right, so we are holding this item, and when we get the details, we'll be voting on it in 2 weeks.
Correct. And separately, I will be sending a letter to the fiscal monitor, and we'll send it around to council members to join me in that endeavor.
Thank you. Do we know when the new fiscal monitor for the school district will be starting?
I believe they are already in. Mayor Evans, you might know better.
Yeah, I think he is started, and we'll start soon. I won't say anything else on this. As you know, this is a sore topic for me, because the school district is costing me a lot of money right now. You guys voted on something last month that is a result of their finances that we're paying taxpayer money for. So it's unfortunate that this is going to be a separate audit.
Is there a possibility that we could have a meeting with their fiscal auditor prior to budget? Obviously, well, budget seating is 10 seconds away, but it would be nice to speak to the new auditor, the fiscal auditor specifically and particularly, given our fiscal relationship, and to see what their thinking is.
I believe that should be part of the letter, is asking for a sit-down conversation. And frankly, if you recall, last month we bonded for the school district.
Yes.
Had I known this last month, I would have held that in committee. I don't believe we should be bonding for the school district while they are asking us to have divergent auditing services, which, you know, for what it's worth, even something small like just different timelines. One auditor wants to do something on this timeline, the other wants to do it on another timeline. That could have major impacts that could be catastrophic. So that'll be part of the ask.
No, I'll just say briefly, the challenge is, though, it's like, you know, when you have a husband and wife, and the husband and wife get divorced, and the husband or the wife has the kids, those school buildings are our kids, because we own them. So we still have to take care of them. So if we don't do the bonding on them, it actually ends up hurting us, because so it's a very tough situation. So we are in a marriage, whether it's almost like an arranged marriage, whether we like it or not. It's very, very complicated. So,
well, perhaps the fiscal monitor can provide some
couples
therapy for us.
They might be able to.
Just one last question. Though it has been our routine and regular practice to do this jointly between the two organizations, it appears as though this may not be the statewide practice for large school districts. So that is the question. Is this a statewide practice for large school districts, that the dependent school districts, that we conduct audits jointly, or is this just kind of a Rochester thing?
I don't know off the top of my head. We'd have to check that out to see what the other big four does, because it would only be New York City they have mayoral control, so they're off the table. Buffalo, obviously, now they're doing it separately, but why a joint audit is so very important is because as we're doing our financials, if you have the same auditor and a question comes up, they can say, "Oh, we're doing that audit, so we can go look and do that." So if we have to wait to do that, that could have a cascading effect on all of our things. And the challenge for us is, and what drives me crazy, is whatever the school district does, it affects us, whether we like it or not, in our bond rating. Now, right now, we have a stellar bond rating. But if the school district were to do something, and this is what we're fighting in court about right now, which is nonsense, we are responsible for whatever they do, whether or not we did it or not, which is crazy. Not fair, but it's the way it is, and that's what I mean by this relationship that we have, and it's why I've kept a good relationship with the school district, because I know that what happens over there affects all of us, and really council, because it's council's audit. More so than anything else.
And Councilmember Patterson, that's a good question that we'll put into the letter as well. Okay. If the fiscal monitor, whose job it is to have a bit of a global view on this stuff, says this is not out of the norm, it's not a big deal, here's the reasons why, that'd be nice to hear. I suspect that there are not other school districts that have had the same kind of fiscal mismanagement that RCSD has had, and therefore it's all the more reason why we should be having joint auditing services. But let's let the fiscal monitor answer that question for us.
All right, fair enough.
So this will be held in committee, and I'll move on to introduction number 68, authorizing an amendatory agreement with the Rochester Convention Center Management Corporation for operating the Joseph A. Floriano Rochester Riverside Convention Center. Any questions, comments, or
Question.
concerns? Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. To the administration, can you explain what's the vision plans for the hotel that's across the street? I know that's kind of like not related to this, but it is kind of related because anything, all this money that we're putting into the convention center, it kind of affects the vitality of the hotel, and the hotel affects the vitality of the convention center. So
I will tell you that, and I think it's a longer discussion, but I will say that that hotel is not only absolutely vital to the convention center, but it's vital to all of us as elected officials in the dollars that we get. If we don't get a strong hotel there, it's going to affect our hotel motel tax, and it's going to affect the dollars that we get to do a lot of the program that we want to do. So the deputy mayor is tasked with that project, and I'm hoping that we'll have an update on where we are before the end of the month as it relates to that hotel. But Rochester, what makes that hotel unique and why it's so important and why it needs to be revitalized and connected to the convention center is because we all know, all of you guys have been to conferences. When you go to a conference, you don't want to stay at the hotel that's way out. You want the hotel that's connected to the convention center, right? So it's one of my #1 priorities, because long-term people may think, oh, it's downtown, I don't have to worry about it. But it actually, when you peel back the layers of the onion, it affects us, because when we get our budget, if we don't have conventions and other things coming there where they decide to go somewhere else, because there's not a vibrant hotel connected to that convention center, it's us trying to operate with one hand behind our back. So it is, I can go on and on about how important it is, but we have to do something with that space, because it affects the long-term vitality of us as a city and our bottom line as dollars that we get into our budget that we're able to use for our residents. So I think we're making some progress there. We've set aside dollars for that, but I can't stress to the community and to council how important the development of that structure is, because it affects all of us in the dollars that we get.
Thank you. And if you could, when, you get that information, could you provide a timeline at least? I mean, included in that. That would be helpful for us. And
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Council President?
Yeah, I just have to disclose my affiliation. I'm a board member of the convention center, but I may vote.
Any further questions? If not, I'll take a motion.
Move it.
So moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. With that, Director Jones, I'd love to have you come up and just share a few key facts about the tax foreclosure auction that occurred on November 10th.
Thank you, Councilmember Gruber. So I won't, this will be really brief, because as you all know, this is a very elongated process, about a 9-month process from beginning to end. So I'm just going to talk about the end of the process, which are the foreclosure sale results. So we had a foreclosure sale November 10th of 2022 at the convention center. Let me just say that, this is a process that involves multiple departments. It's a collaborative effort between the Department of Finance, the Law Department, Neighborhood Business Development, Department of Environmental Services, in particular Department of Environmental Quality. Also, the police department was heavily involved this year. So we started the day of the auction. We had 463 properties that were available for sale. We sold 163 of those properties to private bidders, receiving a total of $5.3 million. We sold 42 properties to the land bank for a total of $589,000. 171 properties were taken by the city, which means that we don't collect any revenue, because those properties that are taken by the city, we simply write off those charges. So that represents a $3.1 million loss in revenue. And we canceled 87 properties, sales for 87 properties.
Are the canceled sales because someone came through and paid taxes at the end?
So the canceled sales could be for myriad reasons. Generally, it's because we failed to notify, an interested party. The law department might cancel a sale because of that. It could be that a person had a tax agreement that, we didn't recognize. It could be that they redeemed properties. I'll let you speak to that. So, it could be for myriad reasons.
Are you going to add something, Linda?
Yeah, I was just going to add that we also are, this year for the first time, canceling the sales for people who have outstanding code violations on other properties that they're not curing. So it's our way, that was a determination last year that we're not going to sell to people who are not responsible. So when people bought at the auction, they were told, if you have outstanding code violations on other properties, you've got, I think it was 30 days to clear them. And we're checking now, and the ones that were not cleared, we're just canceling the sales.
Got it.
So during the commencement of the action, we had approximately 450 properties that were removed from the sale due to tax agreements.
Wow. That's great.
That is.
Can I ask one more question on this slide? The 171 properties that the city of Rochester now owns, what is the plan for those, if not the land bank?
So I guess I would ask the Neighborhood and Business Development Real Estate Division to speak to that in particular.
Got it. We'll follow up with them.
Okay.
So when you say that the previous slide, that those properties were retained by the city of Rochester, so does that mean that in those instances there was no other outstanding lien on the property, so it just comes back to us, or what happened in those cases?
No, there could have been other outstanding liens. In most cases, there are other outstanding liens.
Okay.
But what I mean by that is that no one bid on that property.
Okay.
So it just simply reverts back to to the city.
All right.
Not back to the city because we didn't own it.
Yeah, we already
Got it. So these aren't properties that NBD identified we want to hold these. These are just properties that nobody else bought.
Yes, these are properties that were offered at the auction, but there were no bids on these properties.
And they might be structures or vacant lots or
Yeah,
anything in
they
between.
could be residential structures,
Okay.
they could be commercial properties, they could be vacant lots.
Okay.
So.
Got it. Thank you.
So at the foreclosure auction, there were 600 bidders. And of those 600 bidders, 92.5% were from Monroe County.
Wow.
So that's a hefty amount. 3.2% were from New York State, outside of Monroe County, but from New York State. And 4.3% were outside of New York State.
Is that in line with, I mean, I know we haven't done this auction in 3 years now, but is that in line with?
I think that's in line with what we expected this time around.
And how much of that is because we kept the auction in person as opposed to online?
That I don't know.
Okay. Well,
We can evaluate
I
that.
I was causing trouble.
I know. Okay, this next slide represents the property class codes because Finance Council Member Gruber wanted to know, how many of these properties could potentially be available for single-family homeowners. So 103 of the 163 private sales were sold to individuals, were for one-family units. So 103 properties were for one family, 30 properties were for two family, one property was for a three family, 2 properties for multiple purpose. So all the 200 categories represent residential properties. And then there were 27 non-homestead properties. And that primarily consists of vacant lots and commercial properties.
Thank you so
And
much.
that's all I had.
That's really really helpful.
Yes.
Either of you have any questions?
I'm telling you, me, and yeah, we're done, I guess.
I guess the only follow-up is related to inside Monroe County. could we also get a sense of how many were city residents versus county residents? Meaning of
As far as the purchasers?
the purchasers.
We can try to delve down. Basically, what we get is just a mailing address. So, we can try to delve down into that level of detail.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the mailing address, could that be the property manager's mailing address? Or is so that's listed as the owner, but the address, how do we know that that is actually the owner as opposed to the mailing address for the property manager?
So I'm actually going to let Linda speak to that.
Okay.
I mean, as far as the deed goes, the deed is not going to be the property manager. The
Okay.
deed is going to be to the purchaser.
Okay.
So we can look at what address he's put on.
Okay.
But that could be one of several properties he owns.
So if it's an LLC.
It'll give us an idea.
So if
Not
it,
perfect, but it'll give us an idea.
so if it's an LLC,
Right,
it would
then
still
it's
be in
gonna
my.
be where the LLC's office is.
Right, so that doesn't, so,
And that is the case a lot of the time.
okay, so we kind of don't, potentially we don't, so I guess that would be, the next question would be, how many of these were purchased by LLCs?
Yeah,
Or
I don't know
corporations?
that.
Yeah, I mean, that would probably be the next question, but.
Yeah, and the other thing, I'll just close by saying, first of all, thank you for putting this together, Kim, much appreciated.
Of course.
Councilmember Patterson, I would love to know from your committee's perspective what the city's plan, what NBD's plan to do is with those 171 properties.
Good question, and we're having that, we're going to have that conversation, because that's been, the fight in the argument for years has been, how do we get these properties back in the hands of owner occupants?
Right.
So that's been the push.
Well,
So
and
that's
apropos of our conversation yesterday, the properties that are not taken at auction presumably are the properties that require the most work, that are in the worst condition, and someone's got to do something with them so that for 20 years they don't sit there and just get worse and worse and worse every year.
Well, but the challenge is for the ones that come back to the city that nobody bids on, so now we own it. So if it's that bad, guess who's got the demo bill? We do. So that's the challenge and the question. And usually, if it's so bad that nobody will bid on it, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, no, and it's a problem that falls in our lap for sure. But this is enlightening information, and hopefully NBD will give us some to work with too. Thank you all very much for your time. That concludes the work of the Finance Committee.